Growing up, I was always interested in the subversive things that were bizarre because actually I don't even know why I'm really interested in it.
Hey guys, welcome back to the KoreKara podcast. This week we're talking to Radrey, who is the host of the Why Come Japan podcast. And on his podcast, he's interviewed some pretty big guests such as abroad in Japan, and he's been living in Japan for over 10 years now. And today we're hoping to get a closer look behind his history with Japan and Japanese. Also, we have some pretty big guests coming up, so make sure to subscribe to our channel if you aren't already. But anyways, hope you guys enjoy the podcast.
Hey, what's up guys? Welcome back to the KoreKara podcast. My name is Raza and I'm joined by my co-host Eric. We talk to people of all types of backgrounds about their lives in Japan, studying Japanese, or even tips and tricks on how to learn the language. This week we're joined by a very special guest in Radrey.
Yeah, so Radrey is a YouTuber and podcast host of his podcast, Why Come Japan? And he's been making YouTube videos for around 10 years, and he's been in Japan for over 10 years. And today we're hoping to get a closer look behind his relationship with Japanese and Japan. But before we get into that, Radrey, can you give us a quick background of who you are and where you're at today?
Yeah, hello, my name is Radrey. I am a internet content creator. I've been making content here in Japan since 2009, and I'm still here, and I run a podcast called Why Come Japan, where I interview creatives about their craft and how it relates to Japan. And currently I'm in the works of, I've also have a background in film, and I've made a couple of short films, but mostly what everybody would know me for is the podcast, Why Come Japan?
I see. Let's get started into, your background or your first your first encounter with Japan. So, Radri, how did you actually end up getting in touch with Japanese culture to even begin with?
Well, that's a good question. If you go to my channel, you'll find out that I'm actually a quarter Japanese. I made a podcast about how I grew up being a quarter, because, my grandmother is Japanese, and it's always been one of these things where it's like it was part of my heritage. It was just somebody of who I was. And so I kind of wanted to figure out, or learn more about who I was as a person. That was one thing. And, what's interesting is, my father, he's half, but if you met him, you saw him, you would never guess he was Japanese. You'd never in, a million years. Because you'd think with my last name, you would think that we're Italian or something. Because basically by the way we look. But, we have some Japanese heritage and some background, and my father, he was really into Akira Kurosawa movies, and he introduced me to them, and, that kind of tingled my interest in Japanese culture. So I decided, this is something I've always been interested in. I've always wanted to learn more about Japan, because it's just so different from the rest of the world. And so, I took Japanese courses at, my local community college, and I know you have a couple of other questions related to this, but this kind of gets all of them done in one question. But what I did was I went to Pikes Peak Community College, and when I went there, they had somebody from Temple University who said, hey, we have a university here in Japan, and it's just a regular university. It's just like a campus, but overseas. And, of course, I jumped at it, because I was at that point in time in my life when, you have to go to college, and, that's the next step. And, I wanted to finish my degree, and I felt like it was perfect. So, that's basically my story about how I came to Japan and why I became interested in Japan, I suppose. A lot of it was that. I guess a lot of what you could say for a lot of people who come to Japan is a lot of it is just escapism. A lot of people really just want to escape whatever it is that's going on in their lives to just kind of live here. But I guess that's kind of a long-winded way to answer your question.
I guess kind of going back to your dad being half, did he speak Japanese, and were you able to learn a little bit?
That's the interesting thing.
Classes?
he was born here in Yokohama, but he lost all of it. He doesn't know how to speak really any Japanese anymore because he's completely, I guess the word you'd use is naturalized in the U.S. So, I mean, he holds some identity with the fact that he is half, but I think he more associates himself with, as being an American, opposed to being like, no, I'm a Japanese person, I need to identify as a Japanese, that sort of thing. But identity these days is, I don't know, I'm not sure how to really feel about it. Right. How you should self-identify as anything nowadays.
What about your grandmother? Like, does she only speak Japanese?
Yeah. I mean, she comes back to Japan every now and then. We kind of have a little bit of an estranged relationship right now because she has, like, Alzheimer's. So every time I have to talk to her, it's like I have to go down memory lane to, like, make her remember everything. So it's a little frustrating. But supposedly she comes back to Japan all the time, and sometimes I never even know that she's here. So it's a weird relationship that I have. But I'd like to reach out. I probably should at some point.
I see. And I guess like that moment where you kind of chose Temple University as your kind of avenue for going to Japan, was it something your family was on board with all the way at the time?
Well, I mean, my mother, she actually not taught Japanese. She actually taught English in Kagoshima, like 30 years ago, I guess. What was it? Was it the 80s? I think it was the 80s. And she had a very, fond memory of Japan. And of course, she was very supportive of me coming here because she knew the culture. She knew what it was like over here. What's kind of interesting is you meet some. I don't know. Okay, Razi, you're in the States. I mean, so I mean, like, sometimes you meet people in the States who don't really know much of the difference between China and Japan. Some people still think it's the same thing, which is kind of irksome, but whatever. So where was I going with this? So it was nice to have a mom that, was very supportive of that because she knew the Japanese culture and she liked teaching here and she had very good memories of it. So that was one of the reasons why she had really no problem with me living here. And I think she's still supportive of me living here, despite it being so far away. But it's still something I do. Yeah, I'm still here. We could go into that if you like.
Yeah, well, why not? Life in Japan. I mean, you've been here for a long time, and I mean, making YouTube contents all the way since 2009 too. That's quite an accomplishment and a feat. And I mean, one thing on the KoreKara podcast that we kind of often hear is kind of culture shock when people do come over to Japan and really see things that are not what they're used to for the majority of their lives. So, Radrey, did you ever encounter anything like that when you first came over to Japan?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I guess for people who are coming to Japan, one of the things you should know is you should probably learn as much Japanese as possible because one thing I used to do, I used to work at a place called Robot Restaurant. Maybe you're familiar with it. I would meet so many foreigners who would come up to me and they're like, "Oh, finally, someone who speaks English." Like, really? Like, you didn't study any Japanese for coming here? Like, okay, well, whatever. I mean, then again, it's like if I go to Thailand, I'm not going to be studying lots of Thai. I tried to learn how to say thank you in Thai, and I'm like, no, I'm done. I can't do it. I don't know if you ever tried to learn Thai. Man, that is hard. That is difficult.
It's a rough language, yeah. I mean, respect to anyone who's learned that all the way. I mean, man.
Isn't it like Sawadee or something?
I think that's it, yeah. I could never get the pronunciation down pat, but yeah, so that's one thing. I mean, when I first came here, it's like, it was just so much at one moment. Yeah, here's a fun story for you. When I first came to Japan, back in 2009, the way it was set up was Temple University was supposed to, I was supposed to meet them at a hotel for like a pickup. And if I didn't meet them at the hotel at a certain time, I would have to find my own way and how to get there. And this is me. I've never been to Japan before. I've never experienced what it was like. And so of course, when I get to the airport, they tell me, all right, well, you need to find, they give me some instructions, like find a limousine bus. Are you familiar with the limousine bus? Have you ever seen it before?
Yeah, I have. I
And
have.
I remember looking at it and it says limousine bus. I'm like, that is not a limousine. That's a bus. You know what I mean? Like, why did they call it a
Yeah, yeah.
limousine? That's not a limousine. So I'm just
Something
sitting there
got
look.
lost in translation there.
Yeah, no, I mean, you find out that there's a lot of things here in Japan that make no sense. Like that's one of them, and the other one's like one room mansion. Like that's not a mansion. Like maybe it makes it sound better, but like I guess supposedly this place right here is a one room mansion. It doesn't feel like a mansion. I don't feel like I'm living in luxury. But yeah, so I didn't know what that was, and I'm like, I don't think that's right because it doesn't resemble a limousine. And so I was looking around, and of course there's this one guy there who had very limited English, and he just said taxi. I'm like, all right, let's do it. Let's do taxi. I got to be there at a certain time, and I don't know if I'm gonna even make it because I want to be there on time, and I don't want to be stuck when the trains are gone because I don't know how any of these systems work. It's this is, mind you, this is Narita all the way to Tokyo. So this is like
quite a long way.
Yeah, so this is a
ride.
this is a Neiman, like a $200 taxi ride, which I became very aware of when the guy asked me for Neiman in. Or no, I became very aware of how many bills disappeared from my wallet.
That's a culture shock right there.
Yeah, that was a major culture shock, and I was trying to talk to the taxi driver, but like with my Japanese course, I mean, no disrespect to any of my teachers or anything, but we really slacked off in that entire class. I'm like, oh man, like I don't know what to say to this guy. I was at like such a loss at words. I'm like, I'm so used to like having mundane conversations with taxi drivers or just regular people in like coffee shops or whatever. I mean, I could do that now, but before it's just sort of like, what do I say to this guy? Like, it's hot, like atsui desu ne. Or I forgot what exactly I said. And I think I said it with like a horrid pronunciation, because obviously he didn't react to it. But yeah, that's my first culture shock experience, really, in terms of like getting to the country.
It's like one of those, in the Japanese classes, they'll like put on like a CD and it'll have like a person A and a person B, and you're the person A, but person B never came through, I guess.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. Like, what happened to person B? Oh, he's gone. He's not here anymore. Oh.
Yeah, he never got the invitation to the class, I guess, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's really interesting that you do bring that up, though, because when we went for our study abroads, respectively, we actually did have the exact same experience, too, where we had to go take the limousine bus from there and then meet up at a hotel, which then they would bring us to the place we needed to be. Otherwise, we'd have to figure it out ourselves.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Did you go? Are you alumni? Temple alumni?
No. We just had like a one-off study abroad from our college in the U.S. But
Oh, really? Oh, okay.
yeah,
Was that in Tokyo? I mean, I know this is an interview for me, but I'm very interested about everybody who I talk to. So I always want to know as much as I can.
It's about like 30 minutes from Tokyo.
Yeah, 30 minutes from Tokyo. Yeah.
Like Shizuoka or?
In Saitama.
Oh, Saitama. Oh, okay.
Yeah. I mean, Tokyo is in the name. But
of course, yeah.
In Saitama.
Saitama's like what they call like the New Jersey of Tokyo, I guess.
Yeah.
Oh. I mean, I know they call it Da Saitama.
Yeah, yeah. No disrespect. If you're in love with Saitama, I apologize, but no disrespect. I mean, I'm kind of really close to the Saitama where I'm living here. I mean, I don't mind it. It's just a place you live because you can't afford to live in Tokyo. Or, yeah, I don't really know. Not a lot of people like say, damn, I love living in Saitama. That's my jam, yo. Nobody says that. Or maybe they do. I don't know. Find me somebody who says that, and I'll talk to them.
Yeah, I don't think I've heard that myself either. Yeah, it's true. We both got to go and get that person on our podcast. The person who loves being in Saitama, probably not going to happen, unfortunately. But there's
you never know.
You never know. You never know. Exactly. But I mean, yeah, what a first encounter in Japan right there, Radri. I mean, can completely relate to that. And I mean, you mentioned that you kind of had some Japanese classes, but I mean, as soon as you got that first step into Japan, it kind of became irrelevant with I guess how much they teach you versus how to use it practically, I guess, if that makes any sense. And I mean, how was that experience for you? Like, were you able to kind of improve your Japanese over time over there, or was it something that kind of became a little bit annoying when you first got there?
I mean, it's like what one of my friends said in the Japanese class. If you know a lot of kanji, that really does help. Because, like, you know what is hot water, what is cold water. Like, when you go to turn on your aircon, you know, like, okay, I know what this one is, and I know what that one
Uh-huh.
is. And so you kind of have to, like, through process of trial and error, trying to figure out how to turn on your air conditioner and things like that. And then other things are like, what are social interactions like here in, Japan? Like, I mean, for example, it's like I could learn how to speak Japanese, but it's just sort of like, imagine if I'm a baseball player, but, where am I going with this metaphor? No, for example, let's say I'm a baseball player, right?
Right.
But I don't know any of the rules. But I know how to play baseball, but I don't know how to play baseball like Japan does. Like, I'm sure it's much
Uh-huh.
different than the way they play baseball in the U.S. or baseball in, like, Korea or China or something. Um, and so that's kind of something that you kind of have to learn, like little, social cues. And you pick up on them, like here and there, because you see the way other people interact with each other. And that's something you could pick up on. That's a big thing. I mean, taking classes too. It's one of these languages where you can't just, expect it to come into you like through osmosis, unless of course you're like living with a host family that doesn't really speak English, or if you're like what's another situation? Let's say you're stuck in a job where nobody speaks English there. You just kind of it's sink or swim. It's kind of that mentality if you really want to learn the language, quote
Uh-huh.
unquote, because there is such a disparity between uh, the English world and the world of Japanese. It's a very strange bubble, and being able to like, mesh the two bubbles together to make them one bubble for if you like this metaphor, to make them into one is very difficult. I mean, like maybe you meet some people who are like half Japanese who can like transition from both languages really quickly, and I'm always impressed by them. Always. Especially if they
Oh
can just
yeah.
do it instantly. Like, whoa, that guy can conjugate verbs a lot better than I can. Things like that.
Yeah, he has the on-off switch on lock, you know.
Yeah, no, I'm completely jealous of anybody who can do that, because it's tough, and like you have to have a
It
lot of
is, yeah.
confidence when it comes to speaking a language, especially one you're not like 100% familiar with. Because sometimes like when you're overconfident in like a language, you just look ridiculous. I don't know if you've ever done this, but yeah, that's kind of how it is, or at least how I feel.
Yeah, and I guess in your time at Temple, you were in the dorm, correct?
Yeah, I was in the dorm. I mean, they keep you in the dorm for at least 4 months the first semester, and then they kick you out, and you have to find your own apartment. And that was fun.
Oh wow. Oh wow, there's no mercy over there.
Yeah, no, it was no mercy. I mean, you kind of have to learn all this on your own. I mean, I was like, what? I was like 21 or something at the time. I
Uh-huh.
was still a kid, and still trying to figure all this stuff up, or figure out all these things, like how to do all this, how to learn what responsibility is, how to adult, that sort of thing.
Yeah, yeah. Wow, I mean, especially when coming with finding an apartment, especially in Japan, that's a huge kind of responsibility and a whole process you have to go through too, right? How was it like for you when you had to do that?
Well, I mean, luckily, I had a good group of friends that I knew. That a couple of them, I mean, actually, one of them is a YouTuber. He doesn't really make much anymore. His name is Atomic Boy X. He also did, I guess, just Greg. He goes under the name FYI Tokyo now. But, no, he knew of one place that was featured on Craigslist, I think, here in Japan.
Oh, yeah.
That helped me get a place. I mean, like, it was a total... I mean, it still is, but it's a great place to live. It was in Ogikubo, which is a really good place to live, but it was a real, like, what you'd call a Boro Boro house. It was, the whole place was just, like, falling apart. But, I mean, it was pretty good for the price, and I eventually found it. But if I didn't have that one person to help me out, I probably would have still been at the dorm still looking for places and bought some place that was ridiculously expensive. Because, you know, like in Japan, you have to, like, there's all these extra hidden fees that you have to pay, like the key money or the move-in costs. And some places they make you pay double the rent when you first get there. It's a nightmare. And then you have to also look for places that'll actually, like, allow foreigners to live there. That's another thing.
Right.
So yeah,
I think a lot of times they want like a guarantor, right? Like a
yeah, like a
Japanese
guarantor too. I mean, luckily the guy who I'm still friends with him. I could email him right now. Luckily he was a very a Christian man, but he was Japanese. But he was very religious, and so he was really interested in foreign cultures, and so he would always let lots of foreigners stay at these kind of. Maybe I shouldn't call it Boro House. Maybe that's insulting. I don't know. It was kind of run down. It's very run down. If I show you a picture of it, you're like, damn, you were living there? Like, yes, I was living there. But he was a very nice old man who let us live there for, I mean, such a long period of time.
Right.
I guess like also at Temple University were all the classes in English.
Yeah, I think because that was the big thing. I think the reason why Temple existed in Japan was because Japan always wants to push like English as like a language people could learn, and so in terms of like education, you know, Japan really values people who come from a background of education. I really feel because like if anybody who ever comes here, you know that they want so many papers from you. So that's one of the things that people always require of you. Oh, real quick, well, just a little. And this is like, do you hear that? There's a lot of hammering and sawing in the background. No? Okay, good.
I don't hear it. Yeah.
All right, good. Because at this apartment, they're doing some construction over there. Been doing it for weeks. So if it gets obnoxious, let me know.
Okay, yeah, no worries.
I can repeat certain phrases or certain things again if it gets obtrusive.
They always plan out that construction on purpose, you know.
Right.
They know when the podcasts are coming, and they're like, "All right, let's go sync it up, guys."
Yeah. You having a podcast? Well, too bad. You're gonna have a shitty morning. I'm sorry. Can I swear? Did I say bad words? Okay. All right.
Yeah, I mean, ideally not, but you know, if it happens, it happens. You know,
okay.
we know exactly how. We've done it a good amount of times. We're probably trying to cut down on it. You know. But,
okay.
Yeah.
All right. So I can say things like "gosh darn," "oh the gosh darn shoot thing, freaking bad," you know, things like that.
Mean,
okay.
If it's something really strong, you know, don't hold it back. You know?
Okay. All right.
Yeah. You can always just bleep it.
Yeah,
that's
exactly.
true. That's true.
Yeah, we got you. Don't worry.
Okay.
Yeah. But but you're talking about Temple and kind of like everyone's like background in education in Japan and how they make you have a bunch of papers, right?
Yeah, that's also kind of a bit of a nightmare. Yeah, because they want guarantors, you know, especially if you're going to get a visa. It makes you kind of think like, wait, if I'm a foreigner living in the U.S., is this the same thing? Do people have to go through the same process? Like, I'm trying to think about this now. Like, I don't think we have guarantors, right? You don't have to have that. Or I don't even know anymore.
I think you do, right?
I think so.
Okay,
Yeah.
all right. I mean, maybe this is like a dumb question, but yeah, I mean, there's a lot of paperwork involved, and it seems like everybody who was at Temple, they was always last minute. Like, everything got, you know, taken care of the very last minute. Like, because there was one week when I was thinking, man, am I going to be going to Japan or am I not going to Japan? You know, I don't know if they're going to accept my guarantor, or not the guarantor. What was it? Like, you needed like some financial responsive, or I forgot what exactly they called it. Financial stability or something. And you had to like show them a bank account with an X amount of dollars in it. Otherwise, they wouldn't let you in. You know, just basically to say, hey, I have the money to stay here. You know, I'm not going to like, I don't know, whatever the worst case scenario, whatever it is in their mind, they think that I'm going to do over there. That's probably why they ask for it.
Yeah, I mean, at least in my experience too, I got like the whole like confirmation of the entire kind of study abroad at like the last minute.
Yeah.
You too, right, Eric?
Yeah.
So it might just be an all around thing, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah, it was kind of annoying to be honest, especially planning out more classes in the future, but it is what it is. But yeah, I mean that's pretty interesting to hear though. And I mean at Temple, I mean you mentioned how there's a chance that people might be stuck in the dorms. Did you know anyone who was kind of just there for way too long?
Surprisingly, you'd think there would be. I mean, you could ask for an extension, but it seemed like most of the people there wasn't that many people. It was, I mean, we were much of a mixed bag the first, the semester, what do you call that? The coming in, the freshman class. I guess as a freshman class, we were very much a mixed bag. It's not like we're all like anime otaku. There's like one anime otaku. There's one reclusive person. There's one guy from Switzerland. There's another guy who is like a real Christian type, I guess you could say. I don't think he was born again Christian, but he was very like he was a metalhead, but he was also Christian. It was a very mixed bag, and so yeah. But everybody seemed very professional and they knew what to do, and it was a little it made me nervous, you know, because I was like one of the last people there, still trying to find an apartment. But everybody seemed to adult pretty well. But I imagine there are people who are worse off than me. But in this case, I was the one who was worse off.
I see. I mean, it's interesting you had your class kind of tick off every single mark there, going down the list of different types of people that could be there.
As you were saying that, I was like imagining.
Yeah.
My class, it was also like that.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
It was because like I've talked to other people who have asked them like what kind of people were in your Japanese courses, and they're like, oh, it was just like all, you know, anime otaku types, or oh, it was just all Japanese people, or not like Japanese people who have Japanese background. They're just taking the class because it's an easy A. That sort of thing.
Yeah, I mean, I can imagine. I had a pretty diverse group of people in my class too. It was an interesting time. But at your time in Temple, you were studying film, right?
Yeah, I mean, well, communications. I mean,
Okay, I see.
It kind of like with a film edge to it, but I don't know. It's like what the things you can do with a film degree. Exactly. Nothing. I was waiting for somebody to say something smart. No, nobody said anything. All right, there you go.
You can become the biggest director in Japan. You know?
Yeah, there you go. I've met some of, well, not the biggest ones, but I know of them. It's a very small community. There's like 3. One I've never met.
I guess like who are your favorite directors? Like Japanese directors.
Directors? I mean, it's changed a lot. I don't really watch as much Japanese films anymore because I live here, I guess. I mean, I really liked Miike Takashi Miike in the U.S. There was also, I guess, you know, the state classic, you know, Kurosawa Akira. There's a bunch like Sono Shion. I think that's about it. Yeah, I don't actually follow them too much. Because you'd think that, like, because I studied film, I'd have more of a background in film and that I'd be more familiar with all these kind of artsy people. And I am. I do have a lot of background in terms of, like, a lot of art that I like in terms of film. But I don't follow it as much anymore. I think really like the Netflix model of like making movies has kind of broke me.
I see.
I
So
see.
you don't really like Japanese films all that much nowadays?
Not so much. I think mostly a lot of it has to do with because when you're living in the U.S. and you have no idea what it's like to live here, you kind of want to know more about the other parts of the world and how they live in other parts of the world. Not like movies are one of the things that would help you see some of that to understand like how stories are told in different parts of the world. And now that I'm here, I'm like I watch like Totoro in Japanese or I watch anime that's in Japanese. I'm like, oh, that's what they're saying. Oh, okay, all right. It's just like I watch Slam Dunk and I'm like, oh, okay, that's what they're saying. Like, okay, I understand that context now. That makes it boring. I mean, I'm not saying Slam Dunk is horrible. I mean, it's still a great show. I mean, you kind of have to put on different glasses, quote unquote, to enjoy certain media. Once you've been used to like hearing Dragon Ball Z or something in like horrible dubbing, because like you'd always laugh at like the horrid dubbing, and then you listen, you're like, oh, okay, it's not that completely changes the entire tone of it. It's not like you have like memes where you have like it's over 9,000, like shit like that. Like it's not as in English. It's so dramatic, but like you listen to it in Japanese, like oh okay, it's just that's just the way he is, or how would I explain it? It's not the tone is different. It feels more appropriate, with the characters because you'd always watch anime and you're like, wow, that's weird. Why do they keep on making these weird grunts? Like, oh. And then when you start understanding the language a bit more, you start understanding, like, oh, okay, that's just like normal reactions that, well, not always, but sometimes they're normal reactions like normal Japanese people have. Like, so, for example, if you touch a stove, you probably, like, say, like, ow! Like, that hurts, Whereas, like, in Japan, you're like, deh. Like, you'd say, that hurts. You're like... Or if like you trip, you're like oh, like you make different noises.
Yeah.
And like the association that people have here with, like even like what is it, onomatopoeia with animals. Like dogs don't go woof or bark; they just go wan wan. I'm like wait, what? Like how did you get that one? That's when you start to it really like makes your head. It doesn't make your head hurt, but you're just sort of like, what? Or at least that's how I felt.
Probably got it from the same place as the limousine bus, That same
exactly.
area.
Yeah.
Do you watch any like dramas or TV shows on Netflix, like Japanese ones?
I mean, the last one I watched was the Alice in Borderland one because it looked like a movie. Like, I hate watching television shows in Japan because, like, the aesthetic of how they shoot all of them, it looks like it was used with an iPhone or a camcorder. Like, I can't stand that. That drives me crazy. Yeah. I mean, like, if the show was shot like a movie, I'd watch it. Like was it Zenra Kantoku? Like the naked director? I like that because it looked like a movie. I like the movies. I don't want to watch some, because when you watch like soap operas in the U.S., you don't watch them because you watch well, I mean, I guess maybe you watch them because you're stuck at home and you watch for the mundane plots, but you don't watch them like, man, I love that soap opera aesthetic. That's my jam. No, nobody says that. If anybody does, please message me. But I can't stand that. So, I mean, I think that's one of the reasons why I've kind of like taken a back seat with Japanese movies. Maybe also because they haven't really made much of an international mark, in the recent years. I mean, like the last big, I guess the East Asian movie was like Parasite, which won Best Picture in the U.S.
Oh yeah.
I would probably argue that the Korean cinema, it does a lot better in terms of like selling to international audiences, because I feel like sometimes with Japan, you realize that some things really get lost in translation, and it's like having to explain some of the things to Western audiences. Like, I don't got time for that. I got other things to do. You like check out these 5 kanji. Like, can I do something else? You know,
Yeah.
you don't. It's like sort of if I threw 5 kanji in the chat right now, and you're not, let's say you're not familiar with Japanese, you're like, this and this cool, and you'd probably just say, yeah, sure. Like, I don't know. I'm not okay. I'm not you. I shouldn't, be presumptuous, but.
I mean, then you just throw in the camcorder level quality in, and then it's just a whole mess, isn't it?
Yeah, no, I mean, actually, I've been on a set where they shot the entire movie with like a camcorder and like.
Oh, really?
Yes.
They actually shot it on a camcorder.
Yes, they shot the entire film in a camcorder, and you had like these effects and this makeup and actors that are like such like top level, and it was just embarrassing. Well, then again, I could go into this story if you want, but yeah, that's something else.
Oh, so yeah, I'm pretty interested in hearing that. I haven't really heard
Yeah.
too much about the behind the scenes of a Japanese drama because it always seems so like it seemed like it was low quality like recording and whatnot. But I mean to hear that it actually like it just legitimately is shot off a camcorder, there's no effects or anything. I mean, I kind of want to hear more as to what really goes down behind the scenes here.
Well, let me set it up a little bit here.
Okay.
So when I was in, Temple University, I made a couple of friends with people who liked movies and, Temple University. Maybe I can't call them friends, acquaintances, perhaps. And I guess I could call them friends. I don't know. Anyway, the point is, I had this kind of community of these people that I knew, and at the time, like the only thing you had was like Facebook or I guess just Facebook. I mean, there was Mixi, but Mixi was one of those things where like when you wanted to learn Japanese, but it was way too much Japanese at one moment. One of those things. But anyway, so anyone who used Facebook, and I remember one of my friends who was friends with another guy, this guy named Norman England, who's actually a pretty interesting person. It'd be cool if you could get him on this podcast. But he has like a huge background in like Godzilla films. He was on the set of a lot of the J-horror stuff when that was a thing. And see, he was always making his own short films here in Japan. Like he made one called Feed Me with a bunch of Temple University students. And he made another one called The Idol, which I think is probably one of his best movies. And I helped out with him in one of his films called New Neighbor, which is a really good film, which is underrated. I just think it needs a better title. But anyway, so I made friends with him because one time I saw him in Nakano Broadway. Are you familiar with Nakano Broadway? You know where that is?
Oh yeah, I do.
It's kind of like one of these it's like Akihabara, but like the Akihabara that nobody knows. Or the one the guidebooks don't really say much about. What's that?
The hidden spot.
Yeah, kind of the hidden spot. And so it was always really nice because like you have Akihabara, which is like I would argue Akihabara is more R-rated when you like go up in like some of those tall towers or those tall buildings. When you go to Nakano Broadway, it was more like PG-13, to give like American movie rating systems to locations, because they would mostly focus on kind of like more niche, like otaku. I guess you could argue otaku stuff, goods, I suppose. Like if you're looking for an old poster of, let's say, something like Sailor Moon, you could probably find it there. Whereas like Akihabara is more, I'd argue it's probably targeted more towards tourists. But anyway, so I met Norman England at a poster shop there, and I just said, you look strikingly familiar. Are you Norman England? And yeah, of course he said, yeah, that's me. And then, I added him on Facebook, and then we became friends. And, he messaged me one time. He says, hey, I'm working on a film set. Do you want to come help out? And that's kind of how I got introduced to, filmmaking in Japan. I learned pretty much everything through him.
Wow.
That's how I got into a lot of these genre films. That one I was just mentioning about the horrible grade quality. That was a movie. That was a genre film. All right, get ready for this title. That was a genre film called Rape Zombie. And that was about... Jesus, I'm like hurting, like myself is like dying inside just mentioning this title. that was a movie where it was like basically Ed Wood. Do you know who Ed Wood is?
No.
The actor?
No, Ed Wood is he's like an old Hollywood. Imagine like, do you know Tommy Wiseau?
Yeah.
Imagine Tommy Wiseau like a long time ago. Like what is it? Tim Burton made a film about him, Ed Wood, and he'd always have like these B-level movies, and people watch them just to laugh at them. Like he had this one film called Plan 9 from Outer Space, and it's just people watch it just to like talk about how many fake things they can find in it. And that was essentially Rape Zombie. It was about... Man. There's just so many, like, B-level grade everything. And, like, the director was kind of insane. And, it was also what they call a 24-hour gemba. It was a 24-hour movie shoot. So we were there for 24 hours. Oh, yeah, that was a nightmare. But anyway, yeah. It's just, and plus the camera they're using. I mean, what's interesting about Japanese productions is, they put so much effort and so much time, and and the people who are there, they really, really respect the director, and they really respect the process. I mean, maybe you could argue that's the same in the U.S. I don't know, but it is what it is. I don't know what else to say about it.
I mean, when you just walk into a room full of B-tier level things, I mean, what else can you say,
Yeah, well, I mean, I don't know. If you go onto IMDb, I am credited. Maybe I can say my last name. I don't know. I don't want to get doxxed.
Maybe it's one of those things. If they find out,
Yeah, right.
Yeah. We don't need to mention anything here, but if they find your IMDb, they did it. Congratulations.
Yeah, I'm credited for 2 movies. I've been in a bunch of movies, like a bunch of film sets, not tons, but a bunch. And the only things I really get credited for is I don't think I'm on New Neighbor, the credits for that one, but I'm on the credits for The Pinky, was it Samayo Koyubi, and I'm also on The ABCs of Death, if you know what that is. Anyway, those are my only 2 credits. As of today. 2021.
Hey, I mean, hopefully we'll get to see more, Hopefully I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah. God only knows.
Yeah, and I mean, I guess another thing that happened when you did come to Japan was you starting out your YouTube channel, and I remember in the beginning, you did have a vlog where you kind of had like a casting call, right? And this was for a movie that had to do about an English teacher who loses his job and kind of goes and finds his way from there, right? And this ended up becoming a film that you made in Daikonashi. And I mean, how did that all come about? Because I remember you actually also went on TV, and that same vlog did come about on there as well too, right?
Yeah, kind of. I don't know. I mean, in retrospect, the whole Daikonashi thing was such a disaster. I mean, it's one of those projects that you work on where like you're working on writing some sort of major book or something, and you're like, oh God, what was I thinking? Like, no. I mean, it's okay. I mean, I'm embarrassed every time I look at it. It's one of those things where it's like, I can't look at this. I don't want to stand behind this. I don't want to say that this is mine, bitches. I don't want to say that. I mean, apologies for the vulgarities, but this is just the way I talk all the time. Because everybody okay, the one thing about filmmaking, I guess that drives kind of some people crazy, is for example, let's say your name is Tom Schmo, Tom Schmo's Daikonashi. Like, who's Tom Schmo? Who? You know what I'm saying? It's sort of like everybody always kind of forgets who all the people are who make it. It's sort of like with the iPhone. Like, you look at the iPhone and everybody thinks, it's the Steve Jobs thing. Like, no. There's lots of people who went into making the iPhone. There's a lot of people who came up with the ideas behind it. And a lot of the time people don't recognize the people who created the the touch screen or whatever it is. You know, see, I don't even know their names off the top of my head. And I feel like that's kind of the same thing with filmmaking, is you have a lot of people who produce films, and a lot of the time like the director or like the auteurs behind it, they always want to slap their name on it like they're somebody important. And I really feel like, no, film is really a collaborative process because there's so many people who, work on it. And you kind of have to really make a project that people believe in. And I think that's one of the reasons why I'm kind of embarrassed with Daikonashi, because I kind of had that idea that, like, nah, I'm an auteur and I need to make things and I need to have people know my name and stuff like that. I mean, that's one of the reasons why that film is not available on, digital distribution or whatever. I mean, it's such a student film. It really is. And I mean, it's kind of the same way. I mean, I know this, maybe call this a false equivalency, but like, it's sort of like how Mike Judge looks at Office Space. You can't stand it. I can't stand looking at it. I don't like the actors. I don't like the idea of editing it. I don't want to think about all the things that I have to go through with making this project anymore. But I understand. It's part of who I am. It's part of me. So, I don't know. I have very contentious feelings about it.
I see. It's part of the past. But I mean, look, like kind of going past that now. I mean, how was it like a learning process for you? Because I mean, at the same time, like, there are always things like that. But I mean, it always comes through and kind of helps you out in the long run, I guess. Like at the very least, like, oh, I'm not gonna do that again.
Yeah. No. I mean, that's definitely a big thing. It's like if I'm going to be making another film, it's like I have to really mean it. I can't just be like, yeah, I'll just casually make a movie. No. It's got to be one of these things where it's like I believe in the vision. I believe that this project will, my ideas behind it are something that the world needs to hear. Because I really believe in the idea or the concept of death of the author. Like, once you create something and you put it out there, it's not yours anymore. It belongs to other people. Sure, you can contribute the ideas and, like, change the conversation, but overall, it belongs to other people. Like, the way that people react to it are the way people are going to think that that's what the film is about. Right. Case in point, like, you have a film like Starship Troopers, right? Some people think that film is about glorifying fascism. Other people think that it's about, mocking fascism. Hard to say. So, I mean, in terms of, like, making a film, it all depends on, believing in the vision and finding the right actors and finding the scheduling time and finding the right, creators for the project. Like, what does it sound like? What is it, what's the overall goal of the film? What message are you trying to say with it? And this is why, like, I've read somewhere that some people said, or I can't remember where I heard it, like, you'd have to be crazy to make a movie. Because there's so much that's involved with it.
Yeah, I mean, it really feels like you have to involve finding the dream team to make it happen. And I mean, I have some close friends who are kind of who do a lot of that. And I mean, I've seen firsthand, like, on sets too, how crazy, like, how much work really goes into it. And I completely understand everything you're saying with that. I mean, it's not anything like a step 1, like, think of the movie, step 2, film the movie, step 3, release. Not even close. Like,
yeah.
That makes it, oh my goodness, trying to even explain the amount of steps that go into it. And that's just me as, like, just looking from the outside, being on the inside of that and having to kind of push everything together, especially when you're the one in charge of all that. Oh my God, so much respect to everyone who's been able to do that. It's really, yeah.
Well, it's like I see creators like, going back to J-Vlog stuff, people like abroad in Japan. I'm like, I always have a lot of respect for him. I don't really particularly like all the content that he makes, but I mean, it's always well put together. It's always beautiful to watch. It's like you're watching a television show. And I mean, the effort that he puts into it, I mean, it shows. the numbers that he has that are attached to those videos are well earned. They're well put together.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, I completely agree. It feels like a very well put together production, and you can really feel his kind of like his imprint on every one of his videos. It's by Chris Broad every time you watch a video, not like any J vlogger. It's specifically Chris Broad. I mean,
Mhm.
I really find those amazing to see and are kind of like inspirations across YouTube as like a platform as well, and it's really amazing to see that.
Yeah, yeah, I can agree with that.
Yeah, and I mean, speaking of YouTube, you've been on YouTube for quite a long time, and I
Yeah.
mean, yeah, and I mean, kind of just starting off, what was the whole inspiration behind making the channel? Because this was something you did like kind of right when you got to Japan, right?
Yeah, actually, well, the guy I mentioned prior, or a little earlier in the
Oh,
episode,
uh-huh.
Atomic Boy X, who doesn't really make videos anymore. I guess he just goes by FYI Tokyo Greg, as I said earlier. He used to do YouTube videos, and he made a whole series about. I don't know if it's still up on the internet, but he did a whole series of him, transitioning into, becoming a Temple University student. Like, what was the process like? And it was a very simple process. It wasn't like Abroad in Japan stuff like, here's me filling out the form, here's the dramatic music. No, it was just, I turned on a camera and I started talking. Like one of these talking head sort of things. And I mean, it was very simple, and he'd always talk about his process, and so I kind of was interested in it because it was something very novel at the time. Nobody was really
Uh-huh.
doing that because before it was like with YouTube, it was just because I think like YouTube started off as like a dating site, and because like they used to have like, "Hi, I'm John. I like long walks on the beach," that sort of thing, like kind of introducing like a little Jiko Shokai, like a little introduction. But
Uh-huh.
and then eventually became other things, or like people started posting weird videos, and then eventually led into like vlogs. And this is like before like Casey Neistat, where he decided to like add like 5 dimensions to the vlog. But and so that was one of the things that inspired me. I'm pretty sure this video still exists, but Greg one time asked me, he says, "Hey, I'm going to meet a bunch of other Japan vloggers, like people who make videos here in Japan where they talk about their life." One of those was Hiko Simon. The other one was My Argonauts, if you're familiar with him. And another one is named Cruxe, who doesn't make videos anymore, who you've probably never heard of. And so I was introduced to this whole community of like people on YouTube and learning about all these other, creators here in Japan, like Tokyo Kuni, TkyoSam, that sort of thing.
I
I guess
see.
speaking of Tokyo Sam, like I noticed you guys have like a pretty close relationship. Like he comments on a lot of your videos. And I think he
Yeah,
talks about you on his
yeah.
channel. How did you actually meet him?
Well, I mean, like most people that I've met, it's all through like Hanami, through the Hanami parties that Tokyo Kuni used to host. That's where I met him originally. If you dig through some of my older videos, I made a video called YouTube Japan, and that's when I kind of first met him. Was I interviewed him for my documentary that was for school. Actually, that's one of the few projects from Temple that I could say I'm proud of. I mean, there's a couple of cringy moments. There's so many cringy moments on my YouTube. Like, I'm always, like, contemplating, should I take that down? Oh, I can't watch it. I don't know if you've ever, like, filmed yourself and you watch old videos, you're like, oh, Jesus, was I really that stupid?
Oh, no, don't
That's
worry.
like, that's
I've
what,
been there.
that always happens to me all the time. But anyway, yeah, that's when I first met Tokyo Sam. Uh, of course, yeah, we've made a bunch of videos together. Um, but yeah, I mean, I'm still friends with him. I mean, there's still like internet drama, I guess you could call it, between all of us. But that's, I don't know. I guess that's life, I suppose. I don't know.
I see. I mean, one thing that you did mention on your YouTube channel, though, was how you were kind of intrigued by kind of the weird, wacky, and strange culture of Japan, and how it was kind of like an influence for you in like in your long time here so far. I mean, do you have any kind of examples of that type of culture that's kind of been intriguing you since then?
Oh yeah, I mean, you always find these strange things in Japan.
Oh yeah.
What's interesting though is the way the West portrays the weird things that come out of Japan. Like sometimes they get it wrong, like really wrong. Like I remember one story where there was a somebody made a Japanese like French fry like joke parody of McDonald's with like they showed like Ronald McDonald with like pubic hair, but they were French fries. And then somebody said something like, "Look at what they have for an advert for McDonald's in Japan." Well, they probably didn't use that voice, but but basically that's kind of like, or at least when I read that headline, that's what I'm hearing. I'm like, no, that's not a real advert. That's like a parody that somebody put on Twitter. And then like other stuff is like did you know that eyeball licking is really popular in Japan? Like, no, that's not true. That's like a manga that somebody made. It was like some weird one that yeah, that's definitely one thing. In terms of like talking about weird stuff in Japan, you do find it every now and then. I don't know why. I guess I do know why that a lot of there are strange things here. Somebody once told me that the more oppressive a culture is, the more strange the subculture is, or the more like bizarre a subculture is. Like for example, in Italy, like you have like the Catholic Church, you can find all this very, very strange Italian, I guess pornography, I suppose. I'm not sure. Like weird stuff with like nuns and like they have like a lot of weird exploitation films in Italy. If you're into that, I mean, so that's one of the things. Like growing up, you know, I was always interested in the subversive things that were bizarre, because actually I don't even know why I'm really interested in it. Thinking of myself, I'm thinking out loud right now, but it's just always been something I've been interested in since I've been very young. And then you'd always find these strange things about Japan, and you're like, why is that? Like, why is it like this? You know, like if you go to my podcast, Why Come Japan, the one we mentioned privately on Discord.
Yeah.
Matt Alt's episode where we talk about Nichanaru mostly. It's just like, it was really fascinating reading his book. I mean, stealth plug for Matt Alt's book, Pure Invention, but it basically kind of goes into like kind of the same thing that the process I went through. You know, like saying, why are these weird things coming out of Japan, and like why are there all these, you know, because like I've often said that Japan is kind of like the weird gateway between the East and the West, because you have like so much Western culture here, and you have so much Eastern culture, and it's like a really strange mix. Like it makes sense and it doesn't make sense. Like there's tons of contradictions. Like I can't think of anything off the top of my head, but like one. I don't mean to talk about adult video here, but like one example is like mosaics and, you know, pornography. like why do they have that? You know, why are they so concerned about having that, you know, in adult entertainment? Like they're so concerned. I mean, like they did in the U.S., and because they were worried that the mafia controlled, you know, adult entertainment. But then they found out that that wasn't the case, and so they removed it. But here in Japan, they decide to keep it because they liked it or something. I don't get it.
Illegal, right?
What's that? Well, yeah, because it's also
show,
illegal.
like,
Yeah.
Yeah.
I guess there's some of that. I guess it's to show that they have some decency, but I don't know. Why not just ban it permanently? I mean, like, I know there's other countries it's like you can't even have that. Like, it's not even available. Yeah, like, whatever. I don't know. I don't get it. So that's like a good example of a contradiction. I mean, there's right. others, but for some reason that one always comes up to my mind. Like that's the go-to example. There's more.
The age-old example.
Yeah, I apologize if you have any children listening. I guess it's all right.
It's all good. The KoreKara listeners, they know when to close their ears, you know.
That's got to be a T-shirt. I'll buy that T-shirt. KoreKara listeners, tell us to close your ears.
Yeah, I mean, one of those kind of weird things that you kind of mentioned that you were actually you worked there was the robot restaurant, right? Because
Yeah.
I've walked by there. I've actually never gone inside, but if you're right outside, you can kind of feel like the vibes coming out. You know what I mean? They're playing
Yeah.
like a 15-second song on loop with the giant robot outside. I mean, I've seen pictures, but I mean, what was it like actually like working over there?
That was an experience. There's like one part of the Matt Alt episode that I cut out where, because it kind of like goes into talking about myself, and I wanted the episode to be more about him and talking about how, Nichanadu and 4chan are the same thing, kind of.
Right.
But I kind of went into talking about how I initially thought that robot restaurants kind of a lot like, it reminds me of Japan in a way. Like there's so many things that remind me of it, but he was arguing something about how that robot restaurant kind of like this like Yankee style, like the Yankee style, or the Gyaru kind of like darker skin complexion, where people who they have like these flashy, shiny objects and everything, and it's loud and I guess borderline, or maybe it is obnoxious. And that's kind of what the robot restaurant is. But what's also very strange about it is that it's a tourist trap, because a lot of what it is like if you go there, there's mostly just foreigners. Well, probably not now because of Corona, but it was mostly all just foreigners, and there's very few Japanese. And this is like this is like, I feel like this is what the West wants to see of Japan. They want to see this loud, kind of obnoxious, sort of, in your face kind of Japanese style that kind of really, what foreigners want to expect about Japan. This is what they want to see, opposed to like, you show them, I mean, maybe for some people, they're like saying, oh, I really like tea ceremony, and I really like kabuki, I like the traditional arts and everything. Yeah, maybe for some, but I feel like you meet so many people who come to Japan where like they say, oh, I really like anime, or I really like the very, or they, okay, I'll just say that a lot of the time you meet a lot of people who come here, they look for like the very niche things. So for example, my girlfriend is Chinese, and a lot of her friends often come to Japan, and they're always going to the cosmetic store. They're always there. They're not interested. I mean, sometimes you meet like a few people who like otaku who are interested in anime or something, but it's mostly the cosmetic store. I mean, opposed to like, people in the States or other parts of the world like Europe, other first world countries, you could say things like, a lot of them, you don't casually come to Japan. It's not something like say, oh, I'll just go tomorrow. No. You don't do that. It's one of these things where it's like you have to really mean it. You have to like, I'm going to this country, I'm going to have fun, I'm going to do this, blah, 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 blah.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, completely agree. I mean, you mentioned the cosmetics, which is actually something that not many people talk about, but it's like leading in the world, really, in terms of their effectiveness. I mean, it's crazy. And I mean, I know a lot of people that go there just for that. Always very interesting to see.
Oh, really? Are they of Chinese descent?
Or
are they mostly like of all nationalities?
It's mainly girls, I would say.
Oh, okay. So mostly just women. Okay, I don't know, because I'm not a woman. I'm not interested in makeup, so I don't know what's hip. I mean, maybe there are like, what is it, foundation that's sold for men here. I've seen adverts for it. I don't know if you've ever seen it. Unless I starting to think, oh, I'm getting old. I need to start wearing foundation, right? Maybe I might know more about, makeup in Japan, because I guess it's really good.
Yeah, I guess so. I'm not too familiar on the makeup side. I just know they have good skincare. Is this about? I mean, I'm not super. I've just heard. I mean, I've seen it. I guess I did try it one time before. I mean, felt pretty good, but I mean, I'm no
Foundation?
No,
Foundation, really?
The skincare.
Oh, skincare.
Calm down. Calm down.
Hey, I'm not gonna yuck your yum. That's not why I'm here. I'd be
I'm not
more
any-
interested if you did use foundation, and not want to know why you used it.
I mean that would be pretty interesting, but unfortunately, I have not had the experience.
Okay.
Maybe we can have someone who has had the experience come on the show. Have a whole podcast about that. I'm sure
I'd listen to that.
People, yeah, it sounds really interesting. I mean, I feel like it's a big thing in Korea. I know that it's like normal, like for people to wear men to wear like makeup over there. But yeah, I mean, I'm not too familiar on the topic, but yeah, the skincare is solid. But I mean, besides that, I mean, you've been in Japan for a long time now. Is it close to 12 years now?
Yeah. Well, I got here 2009. If you could math, yeah, I guess that's almost 12.
The quick maths coming through, but
yeah, no.
I
no.
mean,
don't ask me a math question. I need a little more coffee for that.
a little bit more. You give it another hour, and we'll be in the math zone. Yeah. So I mean, you've been in Japan for a long time now, and we've had like guests on who've been in Japan for anywhere between like a little bit of time, maybe like a short couple, like 2-week trip, all the way to living there for quite a while, right? So Radrey, for you, is there anything that's kind of you've gotten tired of in Japan after being here for so long?
I guess you get tired of like the cognitive dissonance, like the different ways of thinking that people think here. You get kind of tired of how slow everything is here. There we go. Here's another contradiction. Things are really fast here. You find a lot of things that are fast, and then you find a lot of things that are slow. Like friendships in Japan, slow. If you're gonna make a friend with someone, the only way to make a friend with someone is if you have a similar interest or you work with them. That's the only way you're gonna make a friend. Like, let's say you both love something really niche. Like, you really love some anime, and you find some group on the internet through a Discord that loves like some anime. You'll be good friends with them, because you'll have things to talk about.
Right.
So that's one thing. So friendships are slow. Kind of overall relations with people from different cultures is kind of annoying to deal with sometimes. Because a lot of the time you have people who kind of show indifference to foreign, culture. I mean, sometimes they're very interested. Don't get me wrong. But sometimes, like, what do they say? Like, the opposite of love is not hate, it's indifference. So I guess if I had anything to complain about in terms of living here, I mean, I only have to say positives, but there are some things that are lame about living in Japan, believe it or not. I would say it's that, because, it's... I guess give it a few years. I mean, you're seeing little changes here and there. Because after living here in 10 years, I've seen, like, gradual changes within people. Because, that, like, you have, like, the Dankai Seidai, like, the baby boomers here in Japan, who are kind of, like, in power now. Who are kind of, slowly, it's going to be transitioning into Generation X and then eventually to us. Or maybe not us. I don't know how old you are. But I'm a millennial. Until it transitions into us, because you're seeing a lot of people, particularly Zoomers, who are getting into TikTok and learning about things about, other cultures, not just, like, Japan. Like, because, I think a lot of people, when they live in a country, particularly like the U.S. or, I don't know, China as well, you kind of get stuck living in the country. You can't really get out. The idea of, like, living... Okay, here's something. Like, the concept of meeting someone in Japan and, like, identifying... Like, as myself as an American, it's weird saying, "Oh, I'm an American." You never really think about the pride that comes with behind that. Like, I never think about that. Like, I mean, maybe I have, like, right down here, you can see in this bookshelf, I have, like, this American bookcase. But of course, I have it ironically, you know? Like, I mean, this is just my general opinion, but, like, I feel like anybody who has, like, a flag of their own country flying in their room, they're like, a little, like, they love the government a little bit too much, I mean, like, like, I still feel like, personally, in terms of, like, politics, I feel like you shouldn't really trust the government too much, because they could, they care about you to a certain degree, but again, this is the KoreKara podcast. I'm not going to get too political, unless there's a politics corner, then I'll go all in, but I don't think so. I guess, yeah, that's one. Well, we're going negatives. See, I guess the mostly the negatives are those is just the cognitive dissonance, the not really accepting foreign cultures just yet. I think it's slowly easing in, because I've noticed, like, the diet's changing a lot too. Because, like, before, like, in the early 2009, I remember seeing so many thin Japanese people, and now they're getting a lot more thicker, I've noticed. And this is not me being like this is not me body shaming at all. I'm just saying, I'm making an observation. It's a mere observation. Anybody who takes that out of context is fired. I don't know what they're fired from, but because this is the internet nowadays. Like, did you hear the KoreKara podcast where Radley was talking about he was body shaming people? No, that's not. No.
Yeah.
All right.
Guys,
well, luckily this is not Twitter. Yeah. Luckily this is not Twitter. You can understand the cadence in my voice. I think that's the biggest problem with, like, the internet nowadays. You can't tell, like, what the situation is when you read something on a piece of paper, or when you read it on Twitter or Facebook or whatever.
True. Yeah. That, I mean, honestly, it's quite a big thing now. And I mean, another big thing is your podcast, Why Come Japan, going 93 episodes strong, I think, now.
Yeah, almost on 100 episodes. I got to do a Where Are They Now podcast soon.
True. I mean, be very interested in that. I mean, very good podcast. Everyone should definitely go take a listen. Very insightful, and some really great guests on. So I mean, everyone should go take a listen to that. But I mean, coming up with that though, I mean, this was kind of before you had your YouTube channel going, and then you kind of decided, okay, I'm gonna make a podcast. So what was kind of the inspiration behind that, and how did it come to be?
Here's a little interesting story for you. So when I originally started YouTube, it was mostly just for fun. It was mostly just as a way to communicate with others, to be social. Because I mean, I don't know if people still say this today. I mean, maybe they really do now. But back then, people often argue that, like, oh, I get so lonely living in Japan, because I'm a gaijin, and I can't really, talk to other people, or, I'm not involved in other, Japanese rituals or whatever. And so it was kind of hard. Back then, it's like saying, well, you have to learn how to be social, especially on the internet. And I was really into it at the time. I mean, some people used to argue that, like, people who only talk through a computer are weird. Right? That was the adjective that people used. Now it's like if you talk on a computer, it's normal, right? Because of Corona. But so that was kind of the thing. And I started doing YouTube, and I watched a bunch of other people, and I kind of experimented a lot with that. And then, after Google bought YouTube back, I think it was 2010, they really started changing everything. And then they started to make everything seem more like a job. Like, be sure to say subscribe at the end of the video. Make sure you hit the bell. Now it's like hit the bell, and make sure you write a comment, and make sure that, you have a little thing, like a little thing to click on. Make sure you have an eye. There's just so much, and it just becomes busy work. And so for a while there, in 2011, I think that was like around the time when I stopped making videos, because like right after that there was the major earthquake that happened.
Mm-hmm.
And by the way, 10-year anniversary. Uh, and I think like I kind of had my feeling was behind it. Like I don't do this because I don't do this as a job. Like I'm not making money off this. This is all I only do this as like a pet project for something that's like fun. You know, it's like a hobby, right?
Right.
And so for a while there, I said, nah, I'm not interested in this. You know, I don't want to engage in YouTube Olympics. You know, like I have to be the one that passes the baton to the next person, or the person who has to compete with, it's funny, at that time, Hikakin was a nobody, but now he's like such a big creator hit in Japan. But I don't want to compete with like the Japanese, like Hikakin or any of these other people. And so I kind of just lost interest in the platform. There was like a good year, like 2012, 2013 maybe. It's just I didn't watch anything on YouTube. Like maybe I'd like click on a video every now and then, but I just completely disassociated myself with it. And then I think it was around the time when I started listening to more podcasts, like from other people and people who would just go to relax, and they chat and chill, like in podcasts like this one, where they start talking about things, or like just their kind of mundane lives, or maybe their niche interests. And I really enjoyed listening to some of them. And when I was younger, I used to always enjoy interview shows. I loved listening to them. I used to like wake up early in the morning, or stay up late with my stepdad to watch like David Letterman or Jay Leno, or I guess even Colbert for that before he became a late night talk show host when he was on Daily Show. But I used to like watch a lot of those things, and I became very interested in it. And I was thinking, I could probably do something like this where I talk to them. I mean, at first I just sort of wanted to I love the idea of the concept of a podcast before I got like the idea of like what it is today. Like now, whenever I start the show, I'm always saying, Why Come Japan is a show about creatives, who talk about their craft and how it relates to Japan. Before I didn't even know what it was. I kind of just started. And the name behind it kind of started as a joke, because I mean it's like kind of a, what do they call, phrasing, like the name of it, because it's one of those questions, like I guess you were saying this with Bobby Judo in your other podcast, like about how it's one of those questions they ask you where you get so tired of hearing it. And with like TkyoSam, I would talk to him, and like we'd always kind of like, the way we used to talk is that we'd kind of like, for lack of a better word, bastardize some of these words, because like when you like with memes in general, how memes evolve and they change. Basically, we kind of evolved the "why did you come to Japan" phrase to "why come Japan," because like what's the shortest way you could say that and you could understand what the context is behind it. And what's something that like sounds like somebody who doesn't speak English fluently would say. And that's kind of where the name came from, the namesake.
I see. I mean, you've been going many years strong now, and I mean, 100 episodes coming up pretty soon, right?
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, so that's very exciting, and I mean, we're both fans of the show, and hope everyone else is too. Yeah, and I mean, I guess like in your time since starting the podcast, because we know from, I guess, running the KoreKara podcast that, I mean, hosting isn't just like an easy job where it just kind of happens. The guest just comes on magically. And I mean, like, for you personally, what's like one way you've kind of grown as a host since like the beginning?
Well, I mean, yeah, having more of a direction behind it. I mean, luckily, I mean, with a lot of these people, I mean, one of the reasons why I've never gone back home to the U.S., because everybody says, go back home, you don't want to be teaching English for forever. Nobody's going to love you, Like, it's going to be a stain on your resume. They're going to talk like that. They're going to exactly talk like they have a New York accent, But anyway, one of the reasons why I stayed is just, I have lots of friends here, and back home where I lived, I kind of dealt with. I had a lot of loneliness. A lot of my friends, when after high school ended, they all left to go to college somewhere out of state, and so I was just kind of alone. And I would always like practice Japanese, or I'd practice writing, or I'd practice drawing at like Denny's for hours on end. Just to kill time sometimes. Or I'd go to the gym alone. You know, and it was horrible. I hated it. And so, I could argue that, maybe I'm more alone, but I still have lots of friends. I'm never bored living here. I can't remember the last time I was bored. And I remember actually writing this. Man, I can't remember the last time I was bored. And then the 2011 earthquake happened. But, like, I can't remember, like, that's when my life got even more interesting than, That's part of one of the reasons why I've still kind of stayed here. It's just that there's so many interesting people. There's always tons of things to talk about. And so for that, I'm still here. And as a host, I suppose how I've grown is like figuring out more of the structure and like what really works and what people want to see. I guess for other people who are starting out podcasts, the best thing you can really do is just start and then try to figure out what it is that works. Because personally, I kind of went into this not really knowing what I wanted. I guess it's kind of the same thing as like when you go to college, you should just start, and then eventually you figure out what it is you want to do, like what it is you want to study. Of course, I don't want you to go in, a mounting debt like a lot of people go into, which is why I probably never went back to college, because I don't like seeing that negative number attached to my name,
I do remember you did make the comment that you might go back to the Temple University bursar's office to see how much money they're stealing away from people, right?
Yeah, well, that was a long time ago. I don't know. I'm not sure how much they're stealing. I don't want to say they're stealing, but they were a little aggressive about it. Like, of course, it's bank. They need to make money. I understand. I get it, but their methods were it was a little irksome. It was a little annoying, but it's kind of like one of these passive aggressive things. Like you get annoyed by their assertive emails, and it's like, why don't I just pay them all in 1 yen? Just to like passively aggressively get back at them. Yeah, I know. I apologize. I'm sorry. I'm one of those guys who down thumbs videos on YouTube, for petty reasons.
Oh man. And maybe you can make a film on what they're doing. You can be like, oh, this is the story of paying tuition to Temple University with 1 yen coins.
Yeah, sure. I don't know.
Everyone who's had to pay the tuition is probably gonna be on board with that one. But in all seriousness though, kind of looking forward though, because you've made films. You said you had a documentary that you really enjoyed making in school, and is there something you kind of see moving forward? Like, do you plan on making a film later on in the future?
Yeah, no, the thing is with making a film, like I said earlier,
Yes.
You kind of really have to have a real clear vision for it, and it has to be a project that people can believe in. If it's just something like, this is just me fucking around, or excuse me, if this is just me screwing around, you want to watch me screw around while I waste your time and energy and money? It's so much fun, People are going to be like, this guy's a jerk, man. Like, he's wasting our time. He's not showing people the movie, and it's just like, I want people to respect me, especially like when you're making a film and you're a director, you're basically the guy who like has to be the energy that pushes people forward. So, that's the biggest thing. It's like when I find a vision that I'm very, very, passionate about, and I feel like this is something that's important for the world that people would want to see and they want to hear. Like, it's interesting finding out what connects with people, because sometimes you'll find things in life that like you think to yourself like, this is awesome, right? And then other people, they look at it like it's okay, I guess it's cool. You never know what people are going to like.
Right. Yeah, when the vision does come and it becomes a thing, you already know that the KoreKara podcast will be there to endorse the film.
You heard it here, folks. If you made it this far, then you get, I don't know, you get a KoreKara sticker or something. Type in this this code for your free sticker. I should do that. That's would be a good idea.
The KoreKara podcast gives a lot of free things at the end of the podcast. Will you stay tuned for yours, Radrey? we got you covered. But I mean, I guess kind of closing out here though. I mean, again, being out here in Japan for so long, I mean, you've gone through so many different experiences, good, bad, and everything in between. And I mean, how, for someone who is planning on moving to Japan, do you have any advice for them? Kind of, what should they expect? I mean, sure, they should expect the limousine bus, that's for sure. You can't forget the limousine bus. But aside from that,
advice for people coming to Japan for the first time. Well, yeah, learn as much Japanese as you can. When you're looking for something, particularly if it's niche, if there's something you really like, do as much research as you possibly can. Don't be like, oh, I'll just go and I'll experience. If you want to do that, fine. But remember that you're going to get lost. You're really going to get lost. So that's one thing. Especially if you go to Tokyo, where you look at like the spaghetti train lines that they have here. That's a nightmare to figure out. So do your homework. Know what it is you like. Have a clear vision of what your trip is going to be like, or if you want to stay here long term, kind of think about what that looks like. For probably a lot of people, I came here just saying, I'll stay for a couple of years, I'll go home, and then things happened. One of the things that keeps me here, really, here's the fun fact. One of the things that keeps me here is I don't get bombarded with religion. I feel the longer I live here, the more and more I become an atheist. And like I always love how kind of apolitical people are here. People don't have like contentious arguments about politics that they're disconnected from. And so if you're going to be living here long term, really think about that and think about what it is you kind of see for yourself. And I mean, of course, do as much research as you can. And yeah, at the end of the day, the research will save your life.
Save your life, indeed it will. So on that note, Radrey, thank you so much for coming on the podcast. It's been a pleasure. And really enjoyed this conversation with you today. And as for our listeners, where can they go and find you?
Yeah, you can find me on YouTube. You can just type in Radrey, that's Radrey. Or if you want to find me on Apple, I'm on Apple Podcasts. Just type in Why Come Japan. I'm on Spotify. I'm on Google Podcasts and Stitcher. You can find me there. And you can also find me on YouTube. I guess I kind of said that already. YouTube, just Radrey. Pretty easy to find. Yeah.
Yeah, perfect. And I mean, at the end of our podcast, we always have a little fun segment for the KoreKara listeners, which is the message to the KoreKara listeners, the tidbit that they always come to the end to hear. This is where they can open their ears, This is that part of the that part of the podcast. But in all seriousness, though, this could be anything that you want to say. It could be this one word, it could be a sentence, it could be advice, it could be something funny. So, Radrey, what is your message to the KoreKara listeners today?
The message to KoreKara listeners, buy KoreKara goods, push buttons, do good things for humanity. We live under a state of capitalism, so please help us out, please.
And I only heard the first one, guys. Only to buy KoreKara anything, you know what it is. And we will catch you on the next one. Peace.
Bye, guys.
Hey guys, thanks for listening to our podcast. Just want to quickly shout out our patrons, Sadboy, Izinga71, Light, KH90, Jack, Drew, and Miku. And if you want to support us, we have bonus clips of almost every episode on Patreon. And see you guys in the next episode. Peace.